Welcome to the Score Houston podcast. We are so glad you're tuning in for today's deep dive because, well, Score Houston is actually part of America's largest network of free volunteer business mentors.
Right, which is just such an incredible resource.
It really is. And today we're doing something a little different. We are looking at, what the small business owners and entrepreneurs in the Score community can learn from how Elon Musk thinks and how SpaceX builds.
Yeah, and to give some context on why we're looking at them, in 2025, SpaceX is projected to launch more mass into orbit than every other competitor on the planet combined.
Wow.
Right. And they didn't do that by following the established aerospace rules. They actively ignored how everyone else said things, had to be done.
Yeah, they totally tore down the industry's pricing models.
Yeah.
But, and I want to be clear here, we aren't here to talk about getting to Mars.
Exactly. No, we're here to dissect how hard things are actually built.
Because whether you run a salon, a contracting firm, or like a neighborhood bakery right here in Houston, the physics of running a lean, profitable operation are identical.
They really are. And, to rethink your local market, you have to start by breaking your product down to its absolute atoms.
First principles thinking.
Right. So when Musk was looking to buy rockets early on, he was quoted these just astronomical prices from Russian suppliers.
I mean, legacy aerospace companies had zero incentive to innovate. They just passed those bloated costs down the line.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of negotiating a 10% discount, he stopped and asked a really fundamental question. What is a rocket actually made of?
Right. Like, what are the literal ingredients?
Exactly. He looked at the commodity markets for the raw materials, aerospace grade, aluminum alloys, titanium, copper.
And what he found was just crazy. The raw materials only accounted for about 2% of the price tag of a traditional rocket.
2%. The other 98% was just process, bureaucracy, and supplier markup.
Which brings us to, well, what Musk calls the idiot index.
Yeah, it's brutal math, but it's incredibly clarifying. It's simply the ratio of a finished part's total cost compared to the basic materials inside it.
He actually said if the ratio is high, you're an idiot.
Right. If you're paying 50 times the cost of the raw materials, you are essentially paying an idiot tax for someone else's inefficient process.
Okay, let's unpack this, though, because most of our Houston audience, they aren't buying aerospace titanium. How does this apply on Main Street?
Good question. Think about a local contractor. They aren't buying titanium, but they are looking at pre-assembled building kits versus, say, buying raw lumber and hardware.
Oh, I see. The gap between the raw wood and the pre-built kit is your idiot index.
Precisely. You're paying for their assembly time, their transport, their convenience fee. Are you just accepting that markup because that's how the construction industry works?
Right. Or think about a local coffee shop. You can calculate the idiot index for those fancy pre-bottled flavored syrups.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right. The water, sugar, and basic extract inside that bottle cost pennies, but you're paying a massive premium for the brand label and the glass bottle.
Exactly. And if that index is too high, your immediate instinct might be to just bring it in-house and make the syrup yourself.
But wait, there's a trap there, isn't there? Making syrup takes labor, and labor is expensive.
Yeah. It is. You can't just start making everything from scratch without completely overwhelming your staff.
Which leads right into the next principle. You can't start by bringing things in-house. Before you build anything, you have to ruthlessly simplify.
Yes. Musk's core algorithm. He says, the best part is no part. The best process is no process.
I love that. Every single requirement or component is treated as a liability, not an asset.
Right. And the story of the Falcon 9 grid fins it perfectly illustrates this. So grid fins steer the rocket as it falls back through the atmosphere.
And originally, SpaceX designed them to fold flat against the side of the rocket, right, to reduce drag on the way up.
Yeah, which makes complete sense on paper. Any aerospace engineer would tell you they absolutely need to fold.
But folding mechanisms mean hinges, hydraulics, sensors.
Exactly. Hundreds of new points of failure. Until someone finally ran the numbers and asked, what if we just leave them locked open the whole time?
And it turned out the extra drag was totally manageable.
Totally manageable. They deleted the folding mechanism entirely.
And there's a strict metric for this, right? The 10% add back rule.
Yes. If you aren't forced to add back at least 10% of what you deleted, you didn't cut deep enough in the first place. You were playing it way too safe.
So translating that to, say, a Houston consulting firm or a salon, look at your client intake forms or your online booking process.
Cut the steps.
Cut them until it genuinely makes you nervous. If you never have a moment where you realize, oops, we actually did need their zip code, let's put that back,
then your process is still bloated. You're actively wasting your client's time.
Okay, so you've cut every unnecessary step, you've deleted the dead weight, but you still have parts you absolutely need to run your business.
And your suppliers are still charging an astronomical idiot index.
Right. That's the moment you stop relying on them and start building the capability yourself. Vertical integration.
Yes. When legacy suppliers refused to meet SpaceX's cost targets, they just walked away. There's this famous story about an actuator, a device that moves a mechanism.
Oh, yeah. A supplier quoted them, what, $120,000 for this single part?
Yeah, 120 grand. So SpaceX brought the engineering in-house, stripped away the legacy requirements, and built it for just $3,900.
That is just wild. And they did the same thing with computer chips.
Right. The industry standard was these specialized radiation-hardened chips that cost $200,000 each.
But SpaceX realized they didn't need one infallible chip. They bought standard commercial chips for a few $1,000s.
Exactly. And just program them to constantly check each other's work. If space radiation scrambles one, the others override it.
Just bypassing the bureaucracy with clever software. But my favorite example has to be the McDocker.
Oh, the McDocker's brilliant.
So NASA had this incredibly complex docking mechanism. SpaceX needed to test a docking system, so they just built a functional prototype using off-the-shelf mountain bike shock absorbers.
Right, because the physics of absorbing an impact in space aren't that different from a mountain bike landing a huge jump.
They just needed the shock absorber.
Yeah.
They didn't need the $1 million NASA stamp of approval.
So for a local business, this means deeply questioning what you consider commercial grade.
Like a Houston daycare paying a premium for an outsourced commercial cleaning company.
Yeah, hiring a dedicated in-house staffer might give you more control at a fraction of the cost.
Or a restaurant owner fitting out a new dining room. You don't always need bespoke, commercial-grade furniture if high-quality catalog parts can be adapted safely and cheaply.
Stop paying a premium just for the commercial label. But bringing operations in-house is really expensive to set up at first.
Very true.
So to make vertical integration work without going bankrupt, you need massive volume. SpaceX achieved this by building the Model T of rockets with the Falcon 9.
Standardization.
Right. Instead of custom rockets for every client, they standardized the parts across their entire fleet.
They basically told clients, this is the rocket, make your satellite fit our fairing.
Exactly. Refusing custom jobs let them manufacture on an assembly line at scale. That standardization, combined with vertical integration, dropped the marginal cost of a launch from $60 million.
Down to under $15 million.
Yeah, it's staggering.
And I see this all the time with contractors and roofers in Houston. A roofer will bend over backwards to source custom slate for one specific client, and it just destroys their efficiency.
Right, because your actual profit margin is in the standard, highly repeatable shingle jobs.
Standardize your core offerings. Make the customer adapt to your highly efficient Model T service.
Because that gets you more margin, which gives you more capital, which lets you standardize even further.
But you can't achieve that level of standardization if you spend 5 years theorizing over a single prototype in a sterile lab.
No, you have to build the thing and see what breaks. Traditional aerospace analyzes a design perfectly before ever building hardware.
But SpaceX uses a build, test, learn philosophy. Failures are data, not disasters.
Right. When they wanted to figure out how to land boosters, they didn't just run computer simulations for a decade. They literally crashed real rockets into the ocean.
And blew them up on drone ships. It's a hardware-rich approach.
Yeah, those explosions weren't PR disasters. They were precise data points. Every failure taught them the actual limits of the material in reality.
But that strategy only works if you keep a high production rate, right? Musk says a high production rate solves many ills.
Exactly. If you only have one prototype, you are terrified to break it. If you have 10 more coming off the line next week, you can push the current one to its absolute limit.
So for a local business, say a Houston bakery, don't spend 6 months perfecting one master recipe in secret.
Right. Bake 10 variations this week, put them in the display case, and let your customers decide.
Or a salon testing a new marketing channel, test it with a small segment. If it flops, it's not a disaster, it's data.
Yes. And driving all of this is a maniacal sense of urgency. Musk famously tells his teams, if a timeline is long, it's wrong.
Oh, I've heard that. A maniacal sense of urgency is our operating principle.
Yeah, he expects major engineering problems solved in days, not months. It forces teams to strip away the bureaucratic fluff.
But wait, I have to push back hard on this. Moving at that kind of breakneck speed in a local service business genuinely terrifies me.
How so?
Well, if SpaceX blows up a rocket, it's just a drone ship in the ocean. If my local HVAC company rushes a job and accidentally floods a customer's attic, my Yelp rating is destroyed and my business is effectively over.
It's a very valid fear. But urgency doesn't mean being careless with a customer's property.
Okay, so how do you reconcile that?
As Max Olson notes in the source material, a roadblock is a problem statement, not an excuse. Urgency actually forces out overcomplication.
I see.
Right. If you give yourself 6 months to roll out a new seasonal HVAC maintenance plan, you'll over-engineer it with complex pricing tiers and legal terms.
So by forcing a fast timeline, you are forced to launch the simplest, safest version of that idea.
Yes. Launch a basic tune-up package next week to just 5 of your best, most forgiving customers. You didn't ruin your business, you just gathered data quickly.
Okay, that makes sense. Like a landscaper launching a simplified seasonal service next week instead of planning it for 6 months.
Exactly. But to move at that speed, to constantly test and fail and rebuild, you cannot rely on a team that just punches the clock.
Right. You need a specific operating system of people. Missionaries, not mercenaries.
Yes. SpaceX uses its grand vision making humanity multiplanetary as a deliberate filter for hiring.
They want engineers who care deeply about solving the impossible problem, not someone just looking for a paycheck.
And obviously, a local plumbing or HVAC company isn't going to Mars.
No, but you can still filter for missionaries. You hire the tech who genuinely wants to be the hero.
Exactly.
The person who takes pride in keeping a Houston family cool in July or saving a house from a flood.
You don't want the person who rolls their eyes when a late night emergency call comes in.
Yeah.
But, hiring missionaries doesn't work if the leader is hiding in a corner office looking at spreadsheets.
Lead from the front. Musk spends an estimated 50% of his time directly with his engineers on the factory floor.
Right. By bypassing the management layers, he prevents the truth from being sugarcoated. He gets the raw, unfiltered reality.
A restaurant owner in Houston needs to apply this directly. Get out of the back office, spend half your time on the floor, cooking or talking directly to your guests.
Yeah, because being on the floor creates a culture where bad news is given loudly and often.
All bad news should be given loudly and often. I love that principle.
It's vital. Good news can be whispered once, but a failure, a delayed part, that must be broadcast immediately so the team can fix it.
An auto repair shop is the perfect example here. If a customer's transmission part is delayed by a week, do not hide it and hope they don't call.
Call the customer loudly and often to manage their expectations.
Radical honesty builds incredible loyalty, even when the news is bad.
Exactly. And the final piece of this operating system is how you view capital. Money isn't just a scoreboard.
Money is fuel.
Yes, it's fuel that must be reinvested into solving the next massive problem. Musk poured his entire PayPal fortune into keeping SpaceX and Tesla alive.
So for a boutique or a retail store on Main Street, treat your profits as fuel. Reinvest your first $10,000 back into better inventory.
Or a smoother checkout system, yeah. Grow the business and distance yourself from the competition.
So when you look at all these concepts together, you really start to see the flywheel effect.
Right, they aren't isolated ideas. First principles thinking is what found the massive waste in the aerospace supply chain.
And then vertical integration gave them the actual control to eliminate that waste by building it themselves.
And finally, standardization provided the massive volume needed to make that in-house manufacturing profitable.
First principles found the waste, vertical integration eliminated it, and standardization made it profitable. That's a continuous loop every small business in Houston can build.
It really is. It doesn't matter if you're launching rockets or selling coffee. Which brings us to a final thought for everyone to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
It's a closing question from Max Olson's essay that crystallizes this entire mindset. How fast are your feedback loops?
Well, that's good.
Are you waiting months to see if a new idea works? Or are you finding a way to crash the rocket, gather the data, and get to reality today?
Building a business is incredibly hard, and forcing those kinds of fast feedback loops can be daunting, but you definitely do not have to do it alone.
Absolutely not.
If you want to speed up your growth and apply these engineering principles to your own operation, you can get free mentoring and guidance from experienced professionals at score.org, Houston chapter. Thank you so much for tuning in to this deep dive on the SCORE Houston podcast. Get out there and build something great.